overarching goal is to be faithful to God, right, in what we do here. The practice is dedicated to the divine mercy, which is the divine mercy of Jesus Christ. I believe we are an extension of the face, the hands, the feet of Christ, right? I would love that everybody who came through here would experience some of the peace, some of the love, some of the care that Jesus Christ offers everyone. So that's really at the heart of what we try to do. My name is Samuel Bryant. I am the owner and founder of Witness to Love Family Counseling Services. I'm here with my good friend, Mike Shanks. We're going to do a little interview. Mike's going to interview me on kind of how I got started as a therapist and how Witness got started, and we're just going to let the conversation roll.
All right, Sammy, you ready?
I think I'm ready, man.
So, do most people call you Sam or Sammy at this point?
Oh my gosh, I think it's a combination of three: Sam, Samuel.
Yeah.
I prefer Samuel.
You prefer Samuel?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's got that scriptural vibe to it. I suppose it's Sam or Sammy, but
So I was texting the kids that we were doing this morning.
yes.
And I text Sammy. I'm with Sammy, and then I had to erase it, and I put Mr. Bryant. But then I was thinking, I always refer to you as Sammy.
Yes.
But do you think that goes back to a certain time of your life where you were Sammy?
Yeah, I grew up Sammy Lee Bryant,
Okay.
right? I converted when I was 15 years old and switched my name to Samuel Paul Bryant as my confirmation name. And so I've always liked the Samuel. It sounds more scriptural,
Yep.
Makes me feel kind of strong when I think about Samuel from the Old Testament. But I've never been particular with my friends as to if they call me Sam, Sammy, or Samuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with either one.
It's funny, so, right, maybe backing up a little bit, we've known each other for over 30 years.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So we're 1 minute into this thing, and I'm asking you, where did your name come from?
Exactly.
So there's so much of your story to me of like, okay, we're sitting in this office, in a office building, like a little high rise for Tempe, right?
Yes.
And you've got offices and people working for you, and you've got this business.
Yes.
And I've known you through many different stages of your life, right? As before you had kids, before all of this, I'm interested to know some different things that I think would be important for people to understand who you are.
Oh, good.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, for me, I know you never knew your father.
Yes.
But can you talk a little bit about where you grew up, how that became, how many brothers and sisters you had? What did your young life look like?
Good. Yeah, I did grow up fatherless. I'm the last of my mom's 13 children. But I only grew up with 7 siblings because my mom's first 5 children actually died in a fire before I was born. So I grew up with just my mom, whose first 12 children were with her husband. After that, she met my biological father, and they conceived me. So I was born in March of 1965. He died in October of 1965. But before he died, he actually denied that I was his child on his deathbed, which is a whole nother story that I found out when I was 18 years old. So I grew up without any father in the house. We grew up rather poor on welfare, government assistant type housing. My mom got a government assisted loan to get the house we grew up in. I grew up a lot of ways kind of ashamed of like our house because it was pretty messy a lot and lots of bugs that I grew up with.
I can remember you talking about roaches.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I don't even like the word, but anyway.
And some of my memories of you, so I've never been to where you grew up. What town was it?
I grew up in a little town in California called Blythe, California.
Yeah.
10,000, I think, people that lived there pretty much. My graduating class out of Palo Verde High School was 132 people,
Okay.
I think. So pretty small school. Less than 1,000 kids total in the high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you think about your life and you're sitting here as a man established with this business and your family, I mean, maybe we talk about a little bit about, I think to kind of paint the picture, it's good to understand. Talk to me about your current family. So you grew up without a father.
Yes.
And all these siblings, some of which even weren't, I mean, you were the only biological Bryant.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And then you were the youngest, right?
Yes.
And I'm sitting here wondering, when I think of who you are, I have a lot of why. Like, why are you this way?
Mm-hmm.
Why is your faith this important to you?
Yes.
Why did you have so many kids? Right?
Yeah.
How did you learn how to do this and that? And so tell me about your current family right now as it stands.
Yes. So I've been married 31 years to my beautiful wife, Tracy.
Yeah.
We have 8 beautiful, healthy children, ages 15 to 30 years old. My youngest 15, oldest 30 years old. We have 11 grandchildren. To answer the question why, growing up the way that I did, I was the only Bryant in my household. My mom, for some reason, I'll never know why, chose to give me the last name of this person. So part of me always felt like an outsider, right? Being the youngest, knowing that I was different, I looked a little different than my siblings. I had a different last name. It always made me feel like an outsider. Other things that made me feel like an outsider is even in my neighborhood. I grew up in a mostly Latino neighborhood, and it seemed like I always found myself just one step out of the inner circle, right? I didn't quite belong. So I remember clearly in the 8th grade having this vision of, one day I'm going to be married. My wife's going to have my last name. My children are going to have my last name.
Wow.
And I'm finally going to belong. And that motivated me. And I knew even from then, which is before I became Catholic, that I wanted to get married. It was a dream to get married. And it was a dream to have a big family. I always thought, man, if I have 10 kids, I'll be doing really good, because I thought my mom had 13. That was a pretty wild number for me to have 13 kids. But by the grace of God, we've had, once again, 8 beautiful kids.
I mean, it's amazing to watch and witness, ironically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you've been a witness to me my whole life.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So for you to name your business that is really a beautiful thing, because that's what you are to me. That's what you've been to our community. And when I think of, just sitting down with you here today, I thought a lot about you and your life and our friendship, of course, but what you've meant to your family, what you've meant to our community.
Yes.
And getting back to that, like I knew you didn't grow up with your dad. And I wonder, to me, you've always been Catholic, right?
Yeah.
And not only Catholic, but passionately Catholic and boldly Catholic. Where did that come from? And why? How did that start?
So somewhere around the age of probably 14 is when I really started getting interested in practicing a faith. Growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, most of my friends were Catholic. I would see them going to church as a group. They would have to go to catechesis and stuff. Like even after school, they'd get together and go off to church. But around that time, around 14, I started to desire the Lord, right? So I started searching for the Lord. I visited different Protestant churches. And then finally, my track and field and high school football coach invited me to Mass. Growing up the way that I did, more like evangelical, it was pretty anti-Catholic. I had heard things like, all Catholics are going to hell. The Pope is the Antichrist. Catholics practice idolatry, and so on. So of course, I go into a Catholic church, St. Joan of Arc Catholic Church in Blythe, California, and there's statues, and everybody's genuflecting to a box, a golden box. I mean, so it's pretty shocking for a young man from my background going into that setting. And the Lord inspired in me a significant curiosity, an overwhelming curiosity about what was in the golden box, right? Everybody comes into church, they genuflect to this golden box. They leave church, they genuflect to the golden box. And I would ask my friends literally, what is in the box? What's in the box? After some time, of course, choosing to convert to Catholicism, I learned that Jesus Christ in the Eucharist was in the box, right? And after some time of doing my own studies with the scriptures, and the Lord granted me faith in the Eucharist, that made all the difference in the world, right? To me, it was the most loving thing God could have done for me, making himself into this image of bread and wine for me to receive in my own body was, it changed my life forever. Some of the questions you're asking, where does the grace come from? For me, it comes from the grace of the Eucharist, right? The grace of the sacraments, and the grace that Our Lady bestows upon her children, right? That has made all the difference in my life and made me in almost every way the man that you see here now.
Yeah, so it's interesting to hear you talk about this because as a friend, but also as a fellow Catholic, right? I want to know more about, you didn't have the most solid upbringing where you had a lot of examples, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a grandparent? Did you have an uncle or aunts? Like, what was your house like? And did you have struggles before you became Catholic? Talk to me about like that process
Yes.
of growing up and the conversion and what led you to where you're at today.
Gotcha. So growing up, once again, I grew up with 7 siblings. I'm the youngest. Things were just not very ordered. There was never, once again, a man in the house.
Yeah.
Growing up on welfare was also, for those of you who don't know what welfare is basically you're getting a check from the government every month that sustains you. So growing up, I never had the image of a father going off to work and the idea that this father was taking care of us, right? And the food that we're eating is provided for us by the work of our Father. So, and that was something I was keenly aware of growing up, right? There was something about it that always affected me. At a very young age, there was sexual indiscretions in my family that I was exposed to by the age of 5, which had significant impact on me. As I got older, I got exposed to different things, got exposed to pornography at a young age, got exposed also to shoplifting, right? It's kind of a funny story, but I was at school one day and a kid was eating a Hostess apple pie, right? And as a poor kid, a Hostess apple pie is like a big deal. I was like, oh my gosh, where'd you get that from?
I prefer the cherry. But yeah,
Yeah.
I remember loving those. Yeah.
I know, right? They were the best thing. And I asked his friend, how did you get that? Because I knew this kid was poor too. I was like, where'd you get the money to get that? And he said, oh, I got this 5-finger discount. I'm a naive kid. I think I'm in the 4th or 5th grade.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I remember still being in elementary school because of where I have the memory from.
Yes.
And I didn't know what 5-finger discount was. So I asked him several times and then finally said, man, I stole it. And that like really planted a seed in me, like a curiosity. Oh, maybe I could steal. I want to have those types of things, right? Maybe I can steal, right? And get this thing that I want. And I remember the first time I stole something, right? Clear as day. I went to a store. I used to always fantasize when we go shopping with my mom with food stamps of getting one of those big Hershey's chocolate bars, not the regular one, the big one that should last you like a month.
Right.
And I stole one of those. And it had a devilish effect, like a greed that woke up in me, that I could take those things if I wanted them. And it didn't hurt anyone. It's a grocery store. That had a significant impact on how I kind of viewed life. It affected me. I shoplifted compulsively for a number of years after that. I think up until about 14. And around 14, another wild thing happened to me. I broke into a store with some friends. We were arrested. I spent 3 days in jail and was released 3 days afterwards. But that remained on my record at the time. But once again, another significant event that affected how I viewed myself, right? I really thought, what's the best way of saying it? I thought of myself as the word that comes to my mind, kind of a loser. Like I'm on a path to nowhere, right?
So let's talk about that a little bit more, right? So no father at home, no family to speak of. You said you felt like an outsider.
Yes.
Right? You're shoplifting, you're exposed to pornography, just deviant kind of stuff. And then you said this golden box.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the man I know that's fascinating to me, and like I think I've said to you, I hate to use these superlatives, but when it comes to empathy, I mean, you're one of the most empathetic people I know.
Thank you.
You're one of the most consistent people I know and diligent when it comes to their faith. And I'm just fascinated to know because the character that you have makes the perfect person to be a counselor and a therapist. And as a friend, I've experienced that firsthand. So I have an idea of what people are experiencing when they're with you and what you're building for your practice.
Yes.
But how did you go from that beginning and then you became Catholic? And from what I understand also, you had some times where you just maybe didn't want to be here. Were you suicidal? Yes. Like all of these strikes against you and you become Catholic and then you become this guy who's got a practice and a great big family. Let's talk about what was that like? How did you get from there to here?
I think the scripture that's appropriate is those who have been forgiven much, love much. I knew my brokenness. I knew how poor I was as far as virtue goes. So when I met the Lord and knew his love, it transformed me, right? Understanding I'm lovable, that I belong to a loving God. I think that's the source of my empathy, right? Even though from a young age, I've always been curious about people. I've always had an interest in people, right? I would even say a love getting to know people. So I, as a therapist, that's been a gift to me because it's made me a great listener. But at the heart of it is this idea, I know who I am by myself, right? I'm a pretty broken, impoverished person. All my riches, all my strength, all my empathy is from the Lord. And I know that I have a very clear idea that no good thing I have did I earn, right? I jokingly say I'm God's forever welfare child, right? Because everything I get freely from him, right? My wife, our children, the business we ran before this for 31 years, and even coming into Witness to Love, it's a gift, right? The company is a gift. Every counselor that has come to work with us is a gift. Every client that has ever come through our doors, it's all a gift. Nothing has been earned.
So on that, I really want to know, because your path, every aspect of your life, nothing of it's been a traditional straight path, right? So I know when you went back to school to become a counselor, but I want to know, take me back to that time of your life and what was the vision? At what point did you have a vision for having a practice, for being a therapist? Because like you said, I mean, that empathy and that consistency and the love, I mean, as I was sitting around thinking about talking to you, I even wondered, how did you learn how to love?
Wow. That last question, how did I learn how to love? I attribute that to my mom, the foundations of it. I've always felt very loved by her. She kind of doted on me, right, being the last of 13 children, but I had a very clear idea, very clear experience of my mom's love. And I attribute to my mom my openness for the faith and the type of relationship I have with God. I feel very loved by God. Our relationship is more of a love affair on that side. It's not like I feel oppressed by God or a pressure to do something. Our relationship is, once again, more on the loving side as opposed to, I know a lot of people think of God as like the disciplinarian, right? Or easily angry, right? Or some people serve God out of a fear of hell, right? That's not been my experience with God. I've experienced God as gentle, kind, merciful, caring, patient, persevering. And I think that shapes the way I encounter people, right? I try to encounter people with that same idea based on love, not on this concept that I call earn and deserve, right? I don't try to earn God's love or God's favor. I don't do that. I just understand that I'm loved by God, and in response, I try to love God in return, directly in my prayers and my spiritual life and our relationship and the way I interact with other people. So that's been I think, at the heart of what makes me empathetic as a therapist. Going back to how did it get started? My wife and I have ran a company called Totally Catholic T-shirts since the first year of our marriage. So we're in our 31st year of running this business. At the time, which was about 12 years ago, things weren't going particularly well, and I knew I needed to find more work. And I wanted to find a career of some kind, something stable and consistent, but where I was serving, because that's always been a part of my life. I want to serve the Lord. I want to serve the church. I want to give glory to God. And this idea of counseling came up, right? That's a long story I won't get into at this point. So I chose to pursue a master's in counseling at Northern Arizona University.
And how old were you at that point?
47.
Right.
Yes. And not being a career academic or not having a career in academia in which I did well, it was very intimidating for me to consider getting a master's in counseling. I remember when school first started, and I went to a school close to me to study. I went to Mesa Community College to study. I remember having a total emotional breakdown in the car, crying, asking the Lord, what am I doing? There's no way I can possibly do this, right? I've never been a good student. How am I ever going to get through 3 years of a master's program? And that genesis was really intimidating and scary, right? But by the grace of God, I survived and probably thrived in 3 years of college. Got my master's when I turned 50 and started counseling. In the beginning, we had created our own business. I created my own business with another therapist who was my supervisor, and it was called Peacemakers Counseling. And I worked out of 3 Catholic churches in the area. Then after that, I worked for another facility here in the area to finish my required hours to get my professional certificate. Then after I got my professional certificate is when we started Witness to Love. The idea for Witness to Love, the name, came from a priest friend of mine who was my wife and I's spiritual advisor early in our marriage. He passed away, I think, sometime, maybe I was 48 years old. And at his funeral service, the priest who was eulogizing him said, Father Doug used to say to me, I feel like the Lord put me on the earth to be a witness to love. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I'm crying. I'm crying for him. I'm crying because I knew that was the name of our practice as soon as I heard that word. So that was the genesis of Witness. And from there, everything has been a gift. Our first therapist, Marion Dunaway, came in early in the practice. I don't have a good idea of the years. I have to write those down. And then every therapist after that gravitated towards witness. I don't remember us recruiting any of our therapists.
So two things.
Yes.
So the witness, when I first heard of it, couldn't have been more appropriate, because when I think back on our friendship and the history, I mean, I remember you wearing a rosary,
Yes.
right? And for people who might not be familiar with Totally Catholic, right? At least the premise of all the beginning shirts was the bigger and the bolder, the better, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so everything you did was loud and proud. And I mean, and for people who aren't from the area, like, you would carry a cross on Good Friday, right?
Yes. Yes.
And throughout the valley for miles and miles and miles, right?
Yes.
So you were living your faith, and then being a black man, back to the outsider thing, there's not a lot of black Catholics in Arizona.
No.
I don't know. I can't speak for the rest of the country, but you've always been a witness. You've always been, in our parish, you walk in your family's a witness. You yourself are a witness. The businesses, of selling T-shirts and speaking to people, you've always been a witness to your faith. And it's really a remarkable story. And
Thank
so
you.
for you to have this business now where talk about the vision. What's your vision for the business moving forward?
Man, I have so many dreams.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when we started to develop, the idea was creating a counseling practice where Catholics can come and feel safe that their faith traditions, their moral beliefs would be respected, right? So we wanted to create a practice that was a safe place for Catholics, Christians, and people with Judeo-Christian values can come and feel safe that their values were going to be respected. And from there, for all people, come to a safe place where they would not feel judged, where they would feel empathized with and cared for, right? So that was the beginning of what we wanted to create. From there, like even recently, I want to develop Witness into like a learning facility where we're training our therapists, in particular in the Catholic understanding of the human person. So they are very much immersed in that idea. The second is creating a learning facility to where we can learn, in particular, the modality of internal family systems, which is called parts therapy. So the idea of turning it into also kind of a learning facility has been on my heart recently. And we'll see what the Lord does with that. But basically, our overarching goal is to be faithful to God, right, in what we do here. The practice is dedicated to the divine mercy, which is the divine mercy of Jesus Christ. I believe we are an extension of the face, the hands, the feet of Christ, right? I would love that everybody who came through here would experience some of the peace, some of the love, some of the care that Jesus Christ offers everyone. So that's really at the heart of what we try to do.
That's really beautiful, Sam. I mean, it makes me incredibly proud of you to hear your story and to hear what you're doing because, you've been so generous to me and you've been so generous to all of your friends and your family, and to see you that's what you've always done, right? Whatever the Lord, what you just said, whatever the Lord wants me to do, I'll do, right?
Yes,
And you bring our Lord into every conversation we have. You bring it into your business. You bring it into your family. And I'm really grateful that you're so generous, right? Like we talked about you being empathetic and generous and loving. I mean, if you just took those three things, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think that's a testament to you living your faith and being a witness. And it's really remarkable to know where you came from, that, it really can only be your faith, in my mind, that allowed you to be that man, right? And to work through all that you came from to allow you to be empathetic and loving and generous. You didn't come from that. And you weren't really given any favors that I saw.
Yes.
But you were also, on top of that, always joyful, always hopeful, always dreaming.
Thank you.